Sending the stream to YouTube.
Okay.
YouTube is accepting the stream. Now I got to
Wonderful.
see if Twitch is accepting the stream. Twitch is accepting the stream, and now Facebook. Okay, so hit the start button.
Okay.
Timer going backwards.
It is.
Put the clapper in front of your face. When you hit the clapper, you're on the air.
Thanks, Richard. Welcome to Talking Peace with the Western New York Peace Center, being recorded here at Think Twice Radio in the home of the future, thanks to our friend and producer, Richard Wicca. Thanks, Richard. And thank you to, and thank you. And thank you also to our friends at Buff State, WBNY, Buffalo's original alternative radio station, coming at 91.3 FM out of Buff State. Thank you to WBNY and Buff State. And thankfulness always makes me think of our Indigenous friends and allies, and to whom we try to be good allies. When we remember that we are here, all of us on this recording here on stolen Haudenosaunee land, stolen Seneca land, actually. And in spite of all of the violence and efforts to extermination, all of the oppression that our Indigenous friends have suffered through, they remain always full of thankfulness, that they always remember first, to have a Ganonyo. And so I want to ask you if anybody wants, either of you want to do that for us for this show, or not. Because I have a little way that I do it, but when we have here two Haudenosaunee people, I could ask if you're willing to do whatever kind of a version of a Ganonyo you want to do. We would be more than honored if you would do it.
Take it, Joe.
I haven't got it in me.
Okay. Well, do you want to hear what I normally? Go ahead.
I'm getting the aura. I'm getting the color bars in my vision right now.
Oh no.
I don't have the concentrate right now.
So here, if you want to just, just we want you to be all right.
Well, I can do a really, really short version.
Sure, please.
Like 4 sentences.
That would be perfect. Thank you.
Oh, okay, well, first, I'm thankful that everybody's here with us. And hopefully, well, not everybody's well, because we can see Joe getting down and out here, but that everybody comes together and heals nicely. And I'd like to say that we need to come together with a good mind and a good heart and be grateful for everything that's in our presence. Right down from the little tiny bugs that crawl on the plants, right up to the trees, to the people, and to the birds in the skies.
No. Wonderful. I'm going to revise my whole way I do it. It's beautiful. That was beautiful. Very, very nice. So I want to thank you both so much for coming on. This is a special show on Indigenous Peoples Day, or for Indigenous Peoples Day. So we're taping it actually on August 2nd, and Indigenous Peoples Day, many people will be hearing this on August 8th off of WBNY, or they're hearing it now as it's live streaming or anything in between. But meanwhile, Indigenous Peoples Day, August 9th, is the UN declared Day of Indigenous People. Yes.
That's International Indigenous Peoples Day.
Right.
As opposed to like a lot of the nationally in the United States, taking over Columbus Day. This is international.
Right.
Indigenous Peoples Day. There's a difference.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for bringing that up and stressing that right off the bat. So before we get into anything, but that's what we'll be mostly talking about. The main thing, I just want to also introduce our wonderful guests. So we'll just go counterclockwise, like I've learned to do, that we always do on Talking Peace. First, Kelly Maracle, who is a water protector and land defender, who is just one of the Shell River 7, who is Seneca and Mohawk Bear Clan, and a wonderful, just what can I say, woman warrior for Mother Earth and for the people and the planet. So welcome, Kelly. Or you welcomed us with the Gnoño. So thanks.
Thank you.
And then Joe Hill. Joe, thank you for joining us. Joe is just getting over COVID. Joe, as a Seneca man, as an attorney, as a again, a people defender, as well as Mother Earth and the water and the land. I think of all the work you did in the Welcome Water Protectors camp, keeping the camp safe and running smoothly for months, over sub-zero temperatures, over all kinds of onslaughts from the out-of-control police units at every side, and just so much work that you've done here locally and also in other places like Standing Rock and about Line 3. Welcome, Joe. We just hope that you're feeling better. So you should so you just take it easy. You can just add anything you want to add as we go. So one thing that we like to start off with a values piece of just to say in this topic of, in this case, International Indigenous Peoples Day, what is a value that you think of that you would like to present or suggest?
Well, I guess my core values comes as to take care of the planet and take care of each other.
Right. So beautiful. So beautifully put, and so concise. No,
Well,
it is.
I mean, it's really easy, right?
Right.
If we each lived by those two sentences, how much more greater would this place be?
Right. You're so right. So that by itself, that is just a very simple instruction, our original instructions, right? Part of our original instructions, and that in almost really every faith, in some kind of way. In
every faith.
Right. So that is beautiful. And, Joe, if when Joe comes back, if he wants to share a value, he could. I often think of truth and love. I mention that frequently, but I'd really like to mention too, another one. This is what Cornell West uses sometimes. So, Joe, is there a value you want to just remind us of in this topic?
Humility.
Wonderful.
Because the work we do is not about the individual.
Right.
It's about our people. It's about our planet.
You're so right.
And, that was one of the, and that's one of the 7 sacred teachings of the Lakota and of the Anishinaabe. That you have humility in things that you do.
Right. So important, so very critical, so beautifully put. And again, so for all of our truly great people, and I say the people I think are truly great, they have been the humble people. They have been humble in their approach, because if they weren't, they end up going off in the wrong direction. It becomes all of ego. So thank you so much for bringing that one. That is such a beautiful and important reminder.
And that's also why the guard shack at the front of the Welcome Water Protector Center, the first sign that went up said, "Check your ego here."
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Wonderful. Yep. So wonderful. So, and it makes me think of, actually, it's connected. The ones I was going to mention, well, actually, I was thinking of moral integrity and universal solidarity. And that's something that Cornel West talks about. But I think from, the thing about your suggestion about humility is even, is so basic, and it needs to come before either of those. That, that moral integrity would be included in that, let my words, let my thoughts and my words be one, let my words and my actions be one. And then if the person is truly humble, that is when they really can do something more. That being a true person, a person of truth, really. And it makes me think of Gandhi, who was such a person of truth. But anyway, so we all have our things to learn, and that's back to the humility. So anyway, so I'm going on too long. I just wanted to say, so when we think of Indigenous Peoples Day, if I want to ask each of you, what do you think of that you want people to remember on that day, or even do on that day? Is there anything particular that you think of to recognize, or is it more during the year? All the being a good ally. Go ahead.
Well, that's a continuous thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can't do that just one day,
right,
and expect things to get better.
No, right.
And one of the reasons there is International Indigenous Peoples Day is because Indigenous people are connected to their land,
Mm-hmm.
and that's all around the globe.
Mm-hmm.
So they're more into protecting the planet than people not connected. And that's one reason that there is, again, that day.
Right.
That the UN decided to do that was because of the environmental protections that Indigenous people were trying to do. And again, that needs to be done all year round, not just one day.
Right.
Because we're going to live here forever until we're done.
Mm-hmm.
But we still got generations and generations and generations that are coming.
Right.
So we have to protect what we can for the babies that are coming.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so that would be the simplest thing to do, is just to take care of the planet. And everybody can do just little tiny things.
Right.
Like not wasting water,
Mm-hmm.
not wasting food,
Mm-hmm.
picking up a little piece of litter when you see it.
Mm-hmm.
It's small little things. But if everybody did them, again, what would this planet look like?
Right.
If everybody just did little tiny things every day.
Right. Right. So true. Joe, anything in particular for you for International Indigenous Peoples Day?
No, because I don't really get hung up on days. I mean, am I going to act different on one day, or am I going to think the same every day?
Right.
I would ask people to give thanks,
Right.
because everything flows from that. if we are thankful for what we have, or even what we don't have, but if we are just thankful for what we have, we don't worry about what we don't have.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I think everything flows from there. You know, at camp, and I probably refer to this a couple times. At camp, you know, when we did have a fire going, it took a while, and then it went out in a rainstorm. But when it was going, you know, I'd hear people, "Oh, I don't pray." Well, you can give thanks, can't you? Yeah, I can do that. And if you do that, you'll find you're doing the same thing.
Right.
Because our prayers aren't about asking for stuff. It's about being thankful.
So beautiful.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't realize that. You know, they think they have to ask for things. And again, gratefulness that's a prayer in its own, right?
Right. Right. Well, that's why in the opening, the standard opening for Talking Peace, one of the things I always say is when I think of thankfulness, I think of our Indigenous friends because of the way you feature thankfulness. Now, other people talk about gratitude is the attitude. It's not unique in that same way we said all this sort of the good mind is not unique, you know, because when people really have it, then they really have it. So it comes from different cultures or places, but they come to the same place. And so that thankfulness that I do think of with you all so much because it's so deep in the way you approach anything. And back to the Ganonyo. You know, we do a Ganonyo at camp. You know, and actually, when we were doing a Ganonyo, and Nayale says, "Oh, I do this every day with my dad," you know. But, you know, I adopted that practice of doing that every day.
Well, I mean, it's the Thanksgiving address, right?
Right. Yep. So important. So beautiful. So when we think about the other thing, when I think about Indigenous Peoples Day, another thing I think of is Indigenous sovereignty and Indigenous rights, and so the sovereignty issues that have been, you know, very pronounced, you know, and challenged, and always every effort made to ignore and not honor the Indigenous rights is what I've seen, and certainly in this country and in, you know, most of the settler countries where people came in and said, you know, oh, I'm taking it over. You know, I mean, especially I'd say, you know, the U.S., Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, who were the ones who really didn't fully sign on to, they only reluctantly did some kind of a half-baked signing on to the UN DRIP. So when you think about Indigenous sovereignty, like what does that mean to you, or what's a way that you feel, you know, that it's a particular learning edge that needs to be worked on?
Well, to me, it feels like it's almost non-existent. I mean, we have all these treaties, and you know, that we're supposed to be sovereign. That's how a lot of the land got taken.
Right.
With these agreements, that we do regulate ourselves. We all have self-governments, but they're not recognized. So, to me, we need to. Well, now we have lawyers, right? We have Indigenous lawyers,
right?
You know the treaties and everything, and I think a lot of them need to step up more to take things to federal court. You know, to at least get it in there. And, you know, well, look at Onondaga finally got some land back, right?
Uh-huh.
It wasn't huge. I mean, it wasn't millions of acres, but they still did get some land back.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the more, if all of us, you know, the indigenous folks of Turtle Island started taking these to the big courts instead of, you know, these little piddly courts, right? City courts or whatever that we don't have the treaties with. We have them with the big governments, not the little tiny town governments. So I think if we got on the ball more and really started pushing these treaty rights and taking them to court, and I think we'd be better off, because we need to stand up. We're so used to getting scraps that a lot of the majority are just happy with that. And we shouldn't be.
Right.
We really shouldn't.
Right. Joe?
Oh, I was thinking about what Kelly said.
Uh-huh. So sovereignty. So what do you think about it, especially as a lawyer, since you're a lawyer
Right.
too, right? What do you think?
Well, I think there have been some surprising holdings by the Supreme Court in the country in the last couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
You know, especially the one in Oklahoma. It said a lot of that is still was never ceded, never given up.
So the court decided in favor of the
Decision.
which tribe was it? Which nation? Oh, well, and anyway, it doesn't matter. So, but in Oklahoma, it was. Was it a?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the McGirt decision.
Uh-huh.
MCIRT. People can look it up that way.
Mm-hmm. And so what was the decision? The decision was that some of the territory was not ceded, and that it should be given back. Is that right?
Was that the criminal decision? And man appealed his conviction based on that the state of Oklahoma didn't have jurisdiction over him.
Oh.
And the U.S. Supreme Court said, you're right.
Wow.
So now what we've got, what will happen is the nations whose land is still sovereign there will have to sit down with the state and determine how they're going to work together or not work together.
Mm-hmm.
Too often within the Seneca Nation, I hear people saying and not pushing sovereignty that they have to work with the state. Well, you know, how's that been going?
Right. Right.
And again, these cases are not with state government. I mean, these treaties weren't made with state governments.
Right. Right.
So why are you worrying about the state?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, that was a great thing when that came through with Oklahoma.
Right.
But did they actually get any land back? Are they actually being sovereign? I mean, it's easy to say, oh, yeah, we'll give you that back. But then when it comes down to it, what's happening? Absolutely nothing.
They didn't get any land back. But what they got back or preserved was the fact that they're still, that they're still the sovereigns over it.
So their rights were recognized. The sovereign
Yes.
right over it was
Yes.
recognized.
Well, they said they were recognized.
Right. So then it requires the next piece of actually doing something about it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Uh-huh. Well, it's a lot. It's a lot. Well, so that's interesting. There is that with sovereignty. That would be one example of sovereign rights being recognized, and also in terms of passports. Is that something that haven't there been a couple some victories on that with people's passports?
Not lately.
Not lately.
Well, with Haudenosaunee passport, some countries recognize that.
Mm-hmm.
Like we have some of our sports teams and stuff traveling on those. Which is quite funny that the U.S. does not recognize it, and neither does Canada, right where we're from.
Right.
But other countries around the world will recognize it.
Well, back to that.
Yeah, I mean, but where we're actually from does not. I actually just applied for mine like last week. I'm flying back and forth to Minnesota, and of course they asked for ID.
Right.
Which I used my tribal ID the last time I went.
Mm-hmm.
They tried to get fussy about it. They asked me, did I have any other ID? I told them no, but I actually do have a U.S. passport, and I did have it on me.
Oh,
but
boy.
I wouldn't present it.
Right, right.
Here's my tribal ID. Take it.
Here's our fearless one. Uh-huh.
Well, I kind of.
Right.
Well, I got my. I ordered my passport just so I can start normalizing that, on my own.
Sure.
So that every time I fly, I have that,
Right.
and this is it.
Right. Right.
It's it's a legal passport, and again, sovereignty, right?
Mm-hmm.
Treaty rights.
Right.
So I'm trying to normalize it, so that here,
Great.
take it.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought they were not going to let me on the plane, but I stood there and I just stared at the woman, and she was trying to figure out how to scan it into the system.
Uh-huh.
And she finally just told me, she goes, here, and just let me go.
Yay. Yay! Victory! Another victory. Another small victory.
I'm trying.
Yeah, no, it's another victory. It is a victory. You're making me think of one of the things I also want to talk about and think about. First of all, that is already so inspiring, and it goes right with that humility that you said and that caring that you said, that each of you, the values that you brought, that are so much of it about care for the creation, for Mother Earth, and for the waters, and for living as originally instructed would include all of that and so much more. So it makes me think of the work that you each have done, so much work that each of you have done, both about Line 3 or Standing Rock, and just so much of that work, and including the Shell River 7, and some of the also court cases that are going on there. So I know I just put a whole bunch of things together. I just want to invite you to talk about, each of you, to talk a little bit about water protection and the land protection as well. Some of the work that you've each done about all of the environment. So, Kelly, if you want to start with Shell River 7, that might be one. That's our most recent thing. That well, there's been at least a slight victory, right?
Yes, there's been a few.
A few. Yeah.
Just
few.
last
Yes.
week, 2 cases got dropped that had felony charges.
Mm-hmm.
One of the women that ran the Welcome Protectors camp, she was charged with conspiracy,
So ridiculous.
aiding and abetting,
Ridiculous.
I believe she had another charge as well, but I don't remember that offhand. Simply for saying that any water protectors were welcome at that camp. That was pretty much it. That's the short version.
Right.
But we went 2 weeks ago for court support for her. And they picked the jury on Wednesday. The prosecutor also released evidence on Wednesday. The trial was supposed to start on Thursday. I was there in time for the trial. So I walked in, I sat down, I got comfortable for about maybe 3 minutes, and the judge said everything was acquitted. Pretty much, thank you for coming. Go on home now.
Wonderful.
So, yeah. I mean, she realized that there was no reason for that at all. So she was totally acquitted of everything.
Wonderful.
Where there was, I don't know what her right name is, but everybody calls her Ducky. But we went for her court, and she's a trans woman. She was looking at felony charges.
Right.
So everybody was quite concerned for her. Minnesota is a bit homophobic.
Right.
And so we didn't know that if Ducky went to jail, that she would be safe. What they're doing now with a lot of the remaining charges, because I was also offered this deal, whatever charges you have, if you give them $900, your charges don't stick and they drop it. And there's no record that you were ever arrested. So it's like, go ahead, give us some money and we'll just let you walk away with nothing. So Ducky did take that plea though, because again, if she would have went to court and they would have found her guilty, there's no telling what would have happened to her.
Right.
So she took it, but she got released that same day, didn't even have to do anything because she had already had $1,000 bond. So that paid off everything. She has no record, and she got $100.
Wonderful.
So
now, and what about your charges? And tell a little bit. So, first of all, I think most people who listen to Talking Peace have probably heard, and lots who haven't, will have probably have heard about Line 3 and the efforts to stop Line 3 that's going in Minnesota. That would be taking the very most the dregs of the oil industry, the tar sands, and just polluting, over crossing so many different tributaries and everything, and to the Mississippi, and just polluting all kinds of things. And they've already had leaks, and they've had all kinds of problems. And Enbridge just really, it's criminal behavior. So I just want to laud what you're doing as really, trying to get our governments to follow the law in terms of safety for people and the planet. But
Great.
if you want to talk a little bit about the Shell River 7 experience that you've had.
Well, there were 6, including me, 6 women. We wanted to make people aware because there was over 1,000 arrests for Line 3. A lot of them are young folks, to which everybody's getting kind of used to that, right?
Right.
So the 6 of us, we're all older. Most of us are grandmothers. We're trying to, again, make people aware of what's going on.
Right.
And so what we did was we had ceremony, and we took canoes down the river. We came up to where the boardwalk was, and walked up to the boardwalk. Cops met us there and said that's far enough. So we had lawn chairs with us. So we sat, pulled out our chairs and we sat there. We were there for about 3.5 hours, and they were singing songs for us down in the river. There was quite a few people that came with us, and they stayed in the river because you're not supposed to be able to arrest people in the water. And so I said they were there to support us. They weren't there, with us.
Right.
So we did have a photojournalist, and she was doing a lot of documenting. Towards the end there, Minnesota was in a drought and hadn't had rain in a long time. During our action, it thunderstormed really bad, where water we were drenched. Everybody was drenched.
Wow.
I actually think that's the only reason why they decided to take us in then, because they were cold.
Right.
Because that water just cooled everything right down, and they were cold. So that's when they arrested us. Our photographer, the one who was documenting, they took her first. They didn't give anybody any kind of dispersal warning. They didn't even tell her she was being arrested, or they didn't. They didn't give her the chance either to leave her be arrested. They just came up behind her and she said, "What are you doing?" And that sheriff said, "Oh, you're being arrested." And she says, "Well, you didn't even say anything to me."
Right.
And he said, "Well, I was walking toward you." And she said, "Well, you need to use your words."
Right.
So they took her first. So, of course, you can document the rest of us being arrested. So then we all got taken together and they took us to Wadena County. We were there for 2 days. And I must say, our jailer, Justin, was very good to us.
Well, good.
Yeah. Well, as it turned out, we were the last crew that he was taking care of. He was leaving that position to go to Oregon and teach history.
Oh, good. Yeah. Wanted to do something he could feel good about.
Yes.
Right.
And he actually knew like a lot of real history as opposed to just going by the book. So that was pretty good. And I wish him well. So I said he did a lot of, he was really nice to us.
Sure.
So thankfully we weren't brutalized at all.
Well, thank God. Yeah, thankfully. Thankfully you weren't. I have to say, when I was arrested twice. It was about drones, but the second time I was arrested, I was the police liaison, and I should have been the last person to be arrested, and shouldn't have been arrested at all. But the same, so it was the same deal. I was the first person they arrested, the very first person, and I'm locked in the police car watching them arrest all these other people. But anyway, so I don't want to get off the track, except that's just the trickery. What they do. They don't arrest the people who are risking arrest or maybe later, but first they just throw you off guard by arresting somebody who shouldn't have even been arrested.
Right.
But so now.
So she's.
Yeah, go ahead.
She actually got her own case going because, of course,
Right.
Even though we all got charged with 2 gross trespassing and 1 interference with a police officer, obstruction. Altogether, max for those it would be 2 years and 9 months for all 3 of those. Again, our photographer wasn't doing anything and wasn't even part of the action.
Right.
But she still faces those charges as well. And I mean, the rest of us were there, but we weren't. we weren't mean. Like, we weren't calling the cops names.
No, no.
You know, when they told us to stop, we did.
Right.
But that's what we're looking at right now. Winona LaDuke, she had a different lawyer and went on her own because they were trying to transfer her to tribal court. So her 2 trespassing charges were dropped because she's an Anishinaabe and that's their territory. So she's a guardian,
Right.
for the waters and the land there.
Right.
So those got dropped.
Wonderful.
But she still faces the other charge. And depending on what happens with us, if the prosecutor wants to, he can bring those 2 trespassing charges back against her.
Oh, boy.
What's that called, Joe? Besides just being jerky.
You definitely call it that. Ridiculous.
Selective
I call it ridiculous.
prosecution.
What?
Selective prosecution.
Selective prosecution. Oh, in other words, they can do whatever they want? Is that what it
That's
is?
what they've been doing, yep.
Pretty
Oh my
much.
God. You have to laugh because you cry because it's so outrageous. When really they're the ones who are breaking the law because all of
Right.
that should be illegal. It's just about, all for the corporations. Money, everything is for sale. Everything is not
Well,
for sale.
Well, like I said too, I mean,
Right.
they're offering you, if you pay them $900,
Right.
everything goes away. So it's not even about justice.
Right.
It's about getting more money.
It's all about,
Yep.
yep.
That's exactly it.
And which is why we're in this situation that we are with people and the planet. With existential threats that are, even to the 7th generation, just talk about to the next couple generations. Just talk about even to this generation.
about this
It's
one.
happening right now. Right.
That's just it. Look at it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's ridiculous. I mean, already a lot of people, and then we come back to Flint, right? I mean, Flint hasn't had drinkable water in years,
Right.
right? So, I mean, it might be a different situation why they can't drink their water, but it's still, they cannot drink their water.
Well, in Buffalo, we have our own problems with water quality also and lead in the pipes, too.
Yeah, but it's, I mean, not that I'm making light of it because, of course, there's nothing light about it,
Right.
but we're not under the same threat as Flint. Again, of course it's bad, and especially when you got babies drinking water, right?
Right. Right.
So, I mean, they're getting poisoned right off the bat.
Mm. So, what are some of the things that you think of that you'd like to see people help with in terms of people and the planet? So, one of the things that you said right off the bat, Kelly, was about all those little things of just trying to be conscientious in our use of water and land, in food, in picking up litter, which I want to say that is a real specialty to me. But anyway,
But I mean, like one little piece of paper in the street, if you pick up one piece of paper a day, that and then if everybody did that, that's still huge.
sure. But so what are some of the things that you'd like to see people do? And one of them, I first of all say, is there any help that you need with your case for Shell River 7, or is it just sort of now it's going to see what happens next?
Well, we went to court. We had our hearing a week and a half ago. Where I actually had to testify that I was Indigenous.
I saw that.
That's
Yeah.
ridiculous.
It was crazy because the prosecutor came in, didn't look at anybody. I think I look Indigenous. I'm sitting there in my ribbon
Yes,
skirt.
you
Right?
do.
And when I got arrested, the only ID I had was my Tonawanda Seneca ID.
Right. All the more
So
so.
I had used that for my ID. And our lawyers, which we have an awesome team of lawyers, brought up like 18 exhibits. Like exhibit 3, I think, to 18 were all treaties. So the prosecutor says, well, I move that these all be removed because they're treaties. It really doesn't matter. And none of the defendants are Native Americans anyway.
Oh, my God.
I actually didn't hear that part. I'm hard of hearing. I didn't hear that part, but my co-defendant passes a note and says, oh, I like how he said Kelly wasn't Native. And so I'm looking at my co-defendant and says, who said I wasn't Native, right? Because I couldn't hear.
Right.
I seen my lawyers talking back and forth with each other. So I didn't say anything. When we had a recess, my lawyer said, she apologized. She goes, I'm so sorry. You know, we feel really bad that he said that. Because even when he said that, the judge kind of looked at me. So like, I just thought he was looking out into the, into the crowd.
Sure.
So when we got back, I had to take the stand to say that my mother's Seneca from Tonawanda and my father's Bay Quinte Mohawk from Six Nations. And yes, I am indeed Native.
Right.
So,
jeez.
But
unbelievable.
Yeah, I couldn't believe I had to testify that I was Indigenous. But I don't know.
And
that was crazy.
And so now, are you just waiting to hear? Is that the state that?
Yes, they're waiting to hear. The lawyers are all getting their briefs in now. And then we just have to wait and see what's next.
So, do you have any comments on all that, Joe?
Oh man, give me a minute.
Sure. Take as much time as you need. I'm glad you stuck with us this long. No,
right.
I know when you're trying to get over the COVID, it's a whole nother thing.
Yeah, well, thankfully, I don't know that struggle.
Oh, good. So you've not had it at all?
No.
Yay.
I know, because too, in the beginning, when there were so many people dying from COVID, I am technically a minister. So some families are reaching out to me to be with their loved ones.
Right.
When they were getting ready to step off the planet.
Right.
And so I did. I would go to hospitals and like they made us all dress up in gowns and, all that other stuff and gloves. But I would take off my gloves so that I could hold their hand.
Right.
And then afterward, I would rush, wash real thoroughly. And again, thankfully, I'm good.
Well, when you do things with a pure heart, it will come right a lot of times.
Well, I was hoping so.
Right. That's what we hope for. Well, I know I've seen that too. Yeah.
But even still, when families are asking me, what am I going to say? No, I'm sorry.
No,
I couldn't do that.
Right. Well, I'm so glad. Well, it must be that you're taking care of yourself and or, got a lot of strength and a good immune system.
Yeah.
Yep. So, so when we think about back to ways that people can help, so Joe, do you have some ways that you would say that people could, things that you'd like to see people do to help, and I would say to help with Indigenous rights and or, just people on the planet?
Well, that brings me to another value. And that would be respect. That the folks that would wish to come into our circles to help with the protection of our lands and waters and ways have enough respect for our people that they don't try to push on us their way of doing things. I've had this happen for the 30 plus years I've been doing this kind of stuff. You know, there's always some white kid who knows how to do this better than us.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and sit down and listen. Shut up and listen.
Right.
Really.
Right.
You know,
Right.
put your ego in your back pocket and sit down and listen.
Right.
I'll give you an example. There was a, media would come to the camp and they'd have their own agendas.
Mm-hmm.
I know this woman, I forget who she wrote for, but, I only spoke to the media when I was asked to.
Mm-hmm.
That wasn't my thing to do.
Right.
I didn't want, but if I was asked to, I would.
Right.
So we're speaking with this woman who's writing for, I might have been the New York Times or something.
Mm-hmm.
She got it all decided in her head what she wants us to say to plug into her story.
Oh, God.
And I told her, I said, you need to listen.
Mm-hmm.
You need to listen to the people. Get off your agenda.
Mm-hmm.
And then a young boy comes by and he looks like he's maybe between 8 and 10 years old and starts talking about how important it is to protect the water.
Mm-hmm.
I said to that reporter, I said, there's your story, right there.
Mm-hmm.
She ignored it.
Oh, my
And
God.
went on doing things the way she had decided she was going to do it. So that's what I mean by respect.
Mm-hmm.
We have quite a lot of knowledge of how the world works. We have quite a lot of knowledge of our teachings tell us that as long as we continue our ways,
Mm-hmm.
the world will continue. That's true of what I know of the Hopi, of the Dene, of the Anishinaabe, of our own Haudenosaunee people,
Mm-hmm.
that as long as we continue our ways, the world will continue. That's a hell of a responsibility,
Right.
especially given how fast we're losing our languages and how fast we're losing our ways.
Mm-hmm.
But what I saw and see happening in those places that have been faced with intense militarization by, say, the police at Standing Rock,
Right.
the young people coming out,
Mm-hmm.
becoming warriors at the age of 19,
Mm-hmm.
singing their songs. Some of those young folks that came from Pine Ridge to Standing Rock Red Warrior Camp.
Mm-hmm.
So it was the first time that they were in a place where they felt safe.
Mm-hmm.
And us elders us older folks need to remember that we're the advisors now.
Right.
And even if we made certain mistakes, it doesn't mean that those young people don't need to make theirs and learn from them.
Sure.
But we can kind of help to guide them along the way.
Right.
And whatever amount of language we have, use a little bit of it every day.
Mm-hmm.
Now I said, when I greeted my nephew for the first time 2 weeks ago, I said, so that the first words out of my mouth that he was going to hear were, Ananawaka.
And so when
I couldn't say a lot. I would have liked to have more.
So when
But-
somebody, oh, I'm sorry.
That was me respecting his youth.
Mm-hmm. Well,
You know?
It is so wonderful, and honestly, there's so many. I'd love for us to keep on talking and learning because I have questions, as you could see, but also we're getting close to the end of the hour now, so I just want
What
to
time we got left?
about 2 minutes, maybe 2 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah. So I want to say, well, first of all, I will give you each a last word, and really we're down to a word, you know. So from each of you. Or two.
What do you want us to say?
Well, anyway, I honestly, we really have to. I think we have time is for me to say we need to have you back on the show. Thank you so very much. I really can't thank you both enough, especially you, Joe, when you're not feeling good, and Kelly, when you are as busy as you are. So we are so grateful.
I'd like to say something,
Sure.
and I'll make it as quick as I can.
Okay. Well,
You know, during this illness, a lot of the medicines that I've been using were brought to me, and they were brought to me at line 3. And I still have enough of them that I could help myself. And that was done out of love and respect, and I don't take it lightly. And the other thing, if people really want to understand why we do what we do and why we've done it for over 529 years and will continue to do so, look up the doctrine of discovery and learn what it is. Because the foundation of law in the United States dates back to the doctrine of discovery, as cited in Ruth Bader Ginsburg's footnote 1 in Sherrill versus City of Sherrill versus the Oneida Nation.
Thanks.
So, you know, do your homework, look it up, you know, and there's a lot to learn. And when people learn about that, I hope they get mad because I teach about that in my law class. It's been a while.
Right.
But I always get at least one person that says, I've been in school for, you know, this many years, and this is the first time I'm hearing about this. It's by design. So free your minds, people.
Amen. It's so true. So I'll just say thank you both so very much. And Kelly, Nyahweh?
You.
Well, and thank you so very much.
Yeah.